Good morning, podcast listeners. This is Ed Franklin, No Limits Podcast. Um, I appreciate you listening. Like I always start my podcast off, I'm always looking for guests on my podcast. If you want to promote a business, that's fine. But really, the conversation is going to be around getting over limitations, telling your story, things like that. I want to stay to the basics. And I'm completely aware that I talk about the same things very often. And I criticize people that write sales books that just plagiarize and talk about the same thing over and over. And then I go and do the same thing. But understand the reason I do that is because I'm not sure that I'm getting through to you at some level. And there are times when maybe you listen and you're not hearing, and then something happens in your life and you're able to get something out of the podcast. So in order for me to stay focused on what I'm talking about, I do talk about the same things. Maybe I tell it a little bit different or whatever, but I really want to get the point across that I'm here for you. This podcast is for you. It's not just for my ego, and it's really to help you get over those limitations because I know, whether you work at a fast food restaurant or you're the CEO of a company, you have things you need to get over, and I'm here to kind of help you do that. And I only know it because of my experience in my life that when I thought things were, completely smooth and everything was great and I was making money and I was doing all those things, and then something would happen, not necessarily to me, but maybe around me that I had to deal with. And we all have those things that happen to us or around us. I promised you a podcast, kind of a part two of millennial versus um, boomer podcast. It really wasn't versus, but I kind of told a lot of stories about when we grew up, and kind of the point I was making is that with the resources we had, we seemed to grow up a little tougher, a little with more thick skin. But conversely, you millennials have grown up much smarter than us. You're much better educated. You have access to a lot more information. You seem to care more about things that are happening in society. We didn't have a lot of that information or knew that even people needed that all the time. So I did that entire podcast, the part two. And then as I was listening to it, I kind of thought, this isn't what my podcast is about. Yes, there was funny stories. There was, things that stupid decisions we made that kind of made us tougher. We were not supervised as well as you were as millennials, and it just kind of looked like a comedy routine, and that's not what I wanted to do. So I did this entire podcast, and I didn't. I just got rid of it. I didn't publish it. So I don't know if you knew, but recently I was on the John Riley Project podcast. John Riley is a great podcaster. He talks a lot about politics, what's going on in and around San Diego County, and he'll talk about global issues too. And he really did me a service. We talked a lot about my podcast and kind of what my goals were. Talked about public speaking, talked about things like that, and I really appreciate John for doing that. He has a lot of great podcasts. So if you're looking for something to listen to, John Riley Project, all over YouTube, Facebook, Spotify, Apple, all those places. And so I'm really indebted to him for doing that, and I appreciate John, and I'll get him back on my podcast. We're not polar opposites. We have a lot of the same beliefs and things. We're about the same age, but he definitely has different opinions on issues than I do, but that's okay because I respect John's opinion. He's very well educated. He's very organized, very well thought out. So John Riley Project, hit him up when you get a chance. Like I said, I really appreciate him doing that for me. And I was just listening to our podcast a little bit, and there was just some topics he brought up that I want to share with you today. And then go from there. So again, edfranklin.nolimits@gmail.com. If you'd like to be a guest, or somebody to be a good guest, maybe somebody that needs to get over or has gotten over some limitations, and they can tell us how they did it. And like I said, it doesn't matter who you are, what level of life you're at, whether you're a baby boomer, whether you're a Gen X, whether you're whatever. We all have things that we're having to deal with, and that is just life. And if you think it's over, I got bad news for you. It's not over. You're going to deal with more stuff. But the better equipped you are, the better you're going to be able to handle it. Now, I know many of you out there are taking care of people. Maybe it's kids, maybe it's a spouse, maybe it's your parents, maybe it's grandkids, and you're doing it because you're givers and you're nurturers, and believe me, these people that you're in charge of, or that you're helping out, or that you're supervising, or whatever you're doing, I know they appreciate what you do. And we got on the subject about kind of being selfish, kind of about how it seems counterproductive in society because you're being told by churches and teachers and your parents that you shouldn't think of yourself first. But I don't really agree with that. I really think in order for you to be the best version of yourself, you need to take care of yourself first. It's the oxygen mask. I brought that up 100 times. Oxygen mask theory, where you need to put that oxygen mask on before you can help your kids in an airplane or where have you. And I still will go to my deathbed thinking that, because it's so important for you to be the best version of yourself. And the first thing you should be doing in the morning is taking care of yourself, whether that's meditation, whether that's going to the gym, whether that's, listening to something positive. Maybe it's listening to this podcast and get you ready for the day. So many times I would do a speaking thing, maybe for the chamber or for an organization. And afterwards, everybody would tell me, "Oh, Ed, I'm so motivated. After you talk, I always want to go, conquer the world and this and that." Then they go outside and maybe someone door ding their car and they lose that motivation. So I want to make it clear, I'm not here to motivate you. I'm hopefully here to inspire you. I'm hopefully here to get you thinking about some things so you can be the best version of yourself. And I need to turn on the fan in here. Oftentimes I was telling somebody the other day that a lot of times when I do these podcasts in the afternoon, I will have some Papa Juice, as my granddaughter calls it. And a lot of times after the workday, I will sit down and have a couple of drinks, and I get in a very creative mode. I start thinking of very positive things, and really, I get a pad of paper out and a pen, and I start writing those things down, just little thoughts. First thing you can do, the best investment you can make, is to get a pad of paper and a pen and start kind of drawing out or making notes on what you want your life to look like, right? What you want your relationships to look like, what you want your financial situation. One of the reasons I'm a little bit behind on this podcast is I'm having some computer issue, and it just happened again while I was talking. So my computer just randomly shut off. So I'll continue on what I was saying. And if you're listening to this, there's going to be a little glitch, but just keep listening. So like I said, the best investment you can make is to get a pad of paper, start writing those things down. And I was talking about Papa Juice. So when I sit down and I start getting creative like that, then the next day I'll go back and I can look at those notes. And it's interesting because when I'm I don't know, after I have those couple drinks, I feel I'm very relaxed, and I'm kind of, any kind of fear I have or any kind of failure thoughts I have, they kind of disappear. And it's really been, I hate to say this, it's really been helpful when I'm doing the podcast. I come up with good ideas for the podcast. I come up with content. And although I shouldn't rely on that, I'm just being completely honest with you. I do that, and it really helps me, kind of get refocused on the podcast. And, listen, I've thought about stopping this podcast 100 times, but I don't know. I love doing it. It doesn't, I like to get the information out to you. I get good feedback on a lot of the podcasts I'm making. And so I'm going to continue to do this. I have 100 episodes. If you ever want to go back in my archives, like on Spotify or YouTube, maybe something, maybe you're having an issue, you can go back and look at those and listen to those podcasts, and it might resonate, in a way to help you with whatever you're going through. Look, I'll say it a million times that I'm very interested in helping people and doing whatever I can to make them a better version of themselves. If I can recommend something or suggest something. But one of the topics we came up with on John Riley was that focus part. So that's first of all, it's the foundation of your future, but it's not the easiest thing to do, to get that picture of who you want to be or what you want to, and really to manifest those thoughts. You almost have to, not almost, you have to get the feeling of what it would be like if you had that money, if you had that car, if you had that relationship, And I'm not saying that money's thing's going to make you happy, but I know it's definitely an issue for a lot of people out there. And we're in this situation in the government, right, where things are going up. We just got a gas and light bill, and I couldn't believe the difference in just a couple of months. So I know you're all going through these things, and I know, I talked to somebody the other day that just had lost their father a couple of years ago and was still kind of reeling from it. Now, she did tell me that she got sober because of that, which is awesome. And she's very good with, the whole situation now, but it's difficult. I said on the John Riley podcast in 2019, I went to like 19 funerals from babies to 30-year-olds to 35, 40, 50, 60-year-old, 80-year-olds. And it wasn't necessarily a depressing year, but it was definitely kind of makes you think about, life and, how much time we have left. And I feel like I'm just not the type that's going to retire. I just want to keep doing whatever I can do and try to be positive in society. And I'm very interested in getting out and speaking. So if you have an organization or you have a group, church group, I'll stop the cussing if I go to a church group just for their own good, or a company that just wants to, bring a speaker in to talk about how their employees can be a better version of themselves. Look, the happier the employer, the better work they're going to do. Excuse me. The happier the employee, the better work they're going to do ultimately. You've heard that saying, happy wife, happy life. It's with any organization. If you have people that are coming in with a high level of confidence, which confidence is, self-esteem is so low right now in the US and has been since COVID started, and we really haven't come out of that yet. It's going to make your employees a lot more productive. So, if you have an organization or a company that, and you'd like me to come speak, just hit me up at edfranklin.nolimits@gmail.com, and I'd be happy to do that. So we talked about an array of things on the John Riley Project. And, I have this, I don't know if it's an ability or what it is, but a lot of times people will come talk to me about problems they're having or whatever. And I feel like they trust me enough to tell me about those things. And I really appreciate that. And I don't try to fix any of their problems. I don't have that ability to fix their problems, but I do have the ability and a desire to sit in the mud with them, right? Just to sit and let them talk to me about it. And a lot of times it's all they need to kind of start forming a way to get, feel different. There's so many brilliant people out there. I meet very intelligent people all the time. And it's not going to sit here and lie to you and tell you that I like everybody I meet or everybody I talk to all the time. But I absolutely do appreciate that their knowledge is different than mine and they know things that I don't know. And it's made me a better person, given me, because I have the ability to listen and kind of extrapolate that information from them rather than judge them or whatever. I mean, we've all had different situations. The things you believe in, your core beliefs right now are about the environment you grew up in, about the place you grew up in, the people you grew up around. Are we perfect parents? No, we were not perfect parents. Are we not perfect now? Our parents weren't perfect, and you won't be a perfect parent either. But I think listening to positive information, reading positive books, things like that can help you get closer to perfection, if you want to say it that way, and make you a better version of yourself. I know I use that sentence a lot, but it's really so important. We get into relationships and sometimes they're not perfect and they affect a lot of areas of our life. Could be work, could be the way we raise kids, could be a lot of different things. I have this desire to, and it keeps coming back to me, we have this terrible homeless situation globally, and we have it bad in San Diego and even starting to get worse in little communities like Vista or Oceanside or other places like that. And I can't help but wonder if it's all about the value you have for yourself and the value homeless people have about themselves. And it could be drug related or a mental issue, or it could be 100 reasons. It could just be a bad luck and they lost a job and they couldn't afford rent. And every organization in the world has tried to figure out how to help this homeless situation. And I don't know how often they're talking to these people or getting across to them how much value they have in life to themselves and to humanity. I said this on the podcast. It's 1 in 400 trillion is the odds that you were even born. You have an intrinsic value in life, and you have a huge value to the people that I said that you're around on a regular basis, whether those be kids, grandparents, grandkids, parents, whatever it is. And we have that's that selfish piece, right? That you have to work on yourself so you can do a good job with other people. I talk to people all the time from 30 years old to 60 years old that are having issues, that are having a hard time getting their head straight. And this is where that 30 minutes a day or that hour a day and that pad of paper can help them. Maybe I've told people before, just draw a line down the middle of a piece of paper and write down the pros and cons of your life. What's not working, what is working. The things that are working, you want to keep those going and maybe enhance those more. The things that aren't working, you want to try to address. And that's where that manifestation comes in a lot, where you can say, well, this is kind of how I want that situation to be. So, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do a super long podcast today. I've been having some technical issues with my computer that I need to get worked out. But I just want to tell you that, look, I know that every one of you has a great value. And I want you to feel that value, but it's going to be incumbent upon you to, look in that mirror in the morning and see all those good things about you. And that self-talk is so important, what you're saying to yourself about, what you're doing. And you got to look at all those good things you're doing for people. We, as parents, tend to get into this cycle of sports, right? And activities for our kids. And although I don't think those are horrible, I think it's too much. I think we're just doing too much with the kids and not letting them be creative, not letting them come up with things they need to do on their own. They're constantly in this mode where they're waiting for a coach, a teacher, or somebody else to tell them what to do, and they need to be more creative. We were very creative as kids. We didn't have the resources that kids have now. We didn't have the money to get involved, and frankly, we had like little league and things like that, but we didn't have all these dance classes and all these things. I mean, I'm sure that they did have them, but they weren't accessible to 90% of society as far as I'm concerned. But the value in us being creative and using our imagination is off the charts positive, right? We hear all these experts about everything. We have an expert for everything. I'm listening to, the Denver Nuggets just won the championship in basketball, and they're starting to talk about, how this center Jokic or whatever his name is could be one of the greatest players in the world after one championship. There's so many outlets for sports. There's so many outlets for news, and so many people that are self-proclaimed experts on these things. And frankly, it's all their opinion. It's all it's all subjective thinking. And we put a lot of value in that, right? I see on Facebook will come up the Kardashians or whoever's coming up the next. We didn't have all that information back then, and we weren't such narcissists as that people are now. And I'm not just talking about millennials. I'm talking about people at any age. I mean, at some level, I'm a narcissist doing this podcast because I'm talking right now to you. I'm looking at myself while I'm talking into a camera, and I'm not saying it's bad all the time. I hope it's not bad that I'm doing it, but I mean, I guess at some level it is kind of narcissistic to do this. But listen, these podcasts are the greatest thing in the world. There's so many people out there doing them. I mean, millions of podcasts out there, and I think in something for everybody. Right? And there's no rules, and there's no FCC involved. I can cuss, I can say whatever I want. And I've said this many a time. This is all my opinion. These are I'm just using my experiences growing up, the knowledge that I've learned. I'm not necessarily right every time. I think I'm right in my mind, of course, but I could be way off on a lot of things. I listened to Jordan Peterson talking about, he's a clinical psychologist. A lot of things that I say, he says, or vice versa. A lot of things he says, I say. I think the reason Joe Rogan's so good at his podcast is because he is open-minded. He's willing to learn, and he'll learn things. He'll learn about his guests, and he's asking them, good questions. And So anyway, I'm kind of getting long-winded, but look, I hope you guys have a great weekend. The sun's coming out. I'll have more content next week. Once I get this glitch figured out on my computer, I'm trying to get off here before it shuts off again. Um, we're getting into summer. It's a fun time. I just want you to be safe. I want you to have some fun, get some sun finally, and reach out to me at any time you want. edfranklin.nolimits@gmail.com. Reach out to me if you have a guest, if you just want to ask a question, if you have a topic you'd like to hear me talk about. If I don't know anything about the topic, I'll find someone who does. So for you regular listeners, I'm here and open to suggestions from you. So I really do appreciate you. And like I said, have a great weekend. Listen to the John Riley Project podcast and keep listening to my podcast. I really appreciate all of you. And I hope to see a lot of you soon. Thank you very much.